Were you exhausted when you got back? That's what I thought.
They can make that little blue line go faster.
Yeah, that's good.
People I hadn't seen.
Oh, yeah,
In decades.
yeah.
And that was nice. What you had.
Good.
I didn't mind. It's good. Yeah. Having the four siblings, three, and four were there, their spouses.
Good.
They both lived from their son.
Oh, yeah.
Different, part of the country.
All right. Okay. Ready to get started? Everybody got a handout?
Yeah.
All right, handout. Raven, would you be so willing to lead us in an opening prayer? And Natalie, would you close that door, please?
God of memory and truth, you are the one who knows all stories in fullness and complexity. As we gather today, open our hearts to listen and hear the history as it was, the history as it is presented to us. Grant us courage to face uncomfortable truths and wisdom to recognize attempts to rewrite our past. Let our reflections deepen our commitment to justice, honesty, and reconciliation. Guide us in humility as disciples shaped always by the truth of the love revealed in Christ. Amen.
Man. Well, let's do this. Let's say howdy to each other. We're gonna ask you to go around and we'll start with Carol. We're gonna start with you at the back.
There you go.
I'm always coming for you.
Justice comes for all.
Justice comes for all. Are there any more handouts? Yeah, here's one.
Just, that's it.
Here. And then this one too. Okay. All right, so you're gonna share your name and what one word describes your reaction to reading about how history can be reshaped for political ends.
Abject fear.
That's a hyphenated one word. I'll give you that.
Carla, unsurprised. Raven, forward. Marty, insist. Natalie. Resign. Happy propaganda.
What was the word?
Propaganda.
Marcelo impressed.
Woo, impressed. I look forward to unpacking that one.
I will, unusual word, acceptance. I realized I've been going through the Kubler-Ross cycle of grief. But last week I was depressed. This was before acceptance. I think I'm there.
You're
Go
up.
ahead, Carolyn.
Not surprised.
Go ahead, keep going.
Joan, helpless.
David, mediafied,
What was this?
mediafied.
Mediafied. Okay, that's a new one.
Like Diane, appalled.
Appalled.
Frank, hopeless.
Hopeless, as in without hope. Eesh.
Well,
All right, Kitty, Marie, then Carolyn.
Kitty, amazed.
Marie, annoyed.
Okay,
I went with Diane's word. I already had it in my mind. Appalled.
appalled. Okay.
It was the first one in my mind before she said it.
I'm just gonna get a lot of my. You're gonna see all my belly and nothing else. That's
so
just
you
not.
could sit on that bench and then you could
Need
sit.
access to. All right. Oh, yes, there we go. That's close enough. Okay, well, so, Josh, and my word is insidious. Insidious. I want to come back to impressed. Tell us about impressed.
Because it's not a majority opinion that they're pushing for, they managed to push for so that enough people have accepted their opinions that they can actually gain power and hold it and not a lot of pushback.
Okay.
And there's no central figurehead. It's a bunch of different people all working together towards a common goal, and that's so hard to do. So glad they were able to accomplish this. Granted, it's a ton of money that they throw at it.
Yeah.
That helps a lot.
Well, and the design of there's not one snake head to lop off.
Yeah.
And to sow just enough discord, as you say, even with it being a minority, even with there being a minority of whatever, a minority led, not minority by race or gender, but minority as in sowing enough dissension to cause great problems. So we covered 2 chapters this week. Chapter 6 was titled The Uses and Abuses of History. And then chapter 7 was The Blitz, Turning the States into Laboratories of Theocracy. And these are starting to get really meaty and really, really a little too close to home, right? So I want to highlight a few things from both of the chapters and a few points and notes that I want to elevate, and then let's digest together and talk about some takeaways. In the uses and abuses of history, chapter 6, there were a few things that they mentioned that I wanted to pull out. One being this gentleman by the name of David Barton, a former math teacher turned historian, or quote unquote historian. Is a key figure in historical revisionism. He advises right-wing policymakers and those in charge of public school curricula, frequently teams up with other Christian nationalist leaders. His work is crucial in providing the philosophical underpinnings for much of the Republican effort today. So what we ended up seeing is David Barton documenting his revision of history, or his vision or his version of history, and touting it as legitimate, making it touting it as legitimate history, which in planting the seed becomes institutionalized and legitimized by a variety of different, even larger mechanisms and levers of power, such that even when aspects of his version of history have been discredited or discounted or corrected, the power of what he has put out there has become so strong that it has taken hold and taken root and been published and canonized in such a way that even today it still takes hold, it still takes root, and various sources that are still upheld. One of the areas where his work becomes legitimized is in the beginning of the movement. We hear about the Museum of the Bible in Washington, D.C. Has anyone visited the Museum of the Bible in Washington, D.C.? So a number of the events that Catherine Stewart documented happened in the year of 2018, the year after the Museum of the Bible was open. And I visited the Museum of the Bible in the spring of 2018 in the midst of all of this stuff. And I meant to bring up some pictures to share pictures with you. To share pictures with you, and I downloaded them and I had them ready and I forgot to bring them. So forgive me for that. But when I was there, I knew what it was about, and I wanted to make sure that I took the opportunity to go and visit and to walk the halls and to read the placards One of the things that I've learned in my own life about going to museums and looking at monuments is there is overt, obvious aspects of why there are pieces of art. So if you go down Millwright to Anderson Mill Baptist Church down the road here, and their lawn that's right next to their property is a pair of a huge 6 foot tall pair of praying hands. It's a piece of art. There's the obvious aspect of looking at the hands. But what I've worked on is trying to ask the question, well, why did they choose to have the art be represented this way? When you see things that are written on walls, like if you go to the museum and you're seeing the descriptions, or you see quotes that are happening in society or on buildings, I ask the question, why? What are they trying to convey by putting this up there? This fall, in a couple of weeks, as all of the teachers in the state of Texas are coming back, everyone will have every classroom will have the 10 Commandments. And the question that I would want us to think is, what is the why? What is the why for why we have these things? So I walked through the Museum of the Bible loaded with that question. What is the why that they're trying to portray or carry across to the visitors of the Museum of the Bible? And Catherine Stewart does a great job. Do some of y'all remember what some of the why was, or did you get a sense of what some of the why was about the Museum of the Bible as she talked about it? What was some of the why as to why there is a Museum of the Bible and its importance? Yeah, Frank?
Well, what I got out of it was to further their agenda. That's the whole reason it was built.
Okay.
In Washington, DC.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, right at this crossroads of governmental power and faith, and the Christian faith specifically. Some of it, she referred to some of it as portrayed not merely as a museum, but as God's base camp, right? And that became a strategic hub for the Christian nationalist movement that hosted conferences and a variety of other activities there of gathering. And it's if you've been to DC, it's like a block off of the mall. So I mean, it really is a stone's throw off of the mall that leads up to Congress, Capitol, U.S. Capitol. Yes.
Well, I was gonna say that it seemed to me that one of their agenda items was to try to portray the fact that we're here in the center of government, and this is a government-backed entity. Because you think of everything you go to Washington DC for, it's all supposedly tied to our government, and so it was like.
Well, yeah, Marty.
Objected to merger.
Well, they're also just trying to reiterate that this was a Christian founding and legitimizes is part of it, but to rewrite history and what the founding fathers really meant. And this is a very convincing way to do that. It's in the museum right in the heart.
Good, Diane.
When was this museum built?
2017.
Something I've never heard of, so.
Yeah. So, in it, she talks about there's a movie. If you remember in there, she talks about this movie that patrons of the museum can sit and watch, and it's kind of a flight tour over Washington DC, honing in on different Bible verses or Christian quotes from the founding fathers from around the city. Y'all remember her talking about that? I watched that video, and I remember in real time thinking this is like the Da Vinci Code or national
Treasure.
National Treasure. Thank you. From Nicolas Cage movie. I mean, you'd be flying, you'd zoom in, you'd see it, and then it'd zone back out and it'd fly to another. I mean, it was very well done. Don't get me wrong. But then you must ask the question, what is the why of what they're trying to convey? The why of that film is to say that the founding fathers and all of our key historical leaders of this country has had from its inception this to be a Christian nation, founded on Christian, Judeo-Christian biblical principles, full stop. And coming to visit this, now there was something cool there was a full-sized replica of the Gutenberg press. And it's the first time I'd ever seen one in my life. And the thing's massive, and they had it, there was a working copy, or working replica, so they could print you off, a page of, scripture. It was cool, don't get me wrong. But very much throughout the Museum of the Bible, a convergence of Christian faith and American government, including in the gift shop. Hobby Lobby. What did we learn about Hobby Lobby in this? Yeah.
Can I go back like one step?
Yes, Marcelo.
So on top of conflating Christianity and America, it also was trying to put forth one specific view of Christianity in one way of reading the Bible, one interpretation, nothing else.
Right.
And I haven't been there, so I don't know what all it does, but it's not just like, it's not saying the founding fathers had different views, all Christian, Judeo, some were deists, some Quakers, whatever. It was all, they followed what we follow right now, very active.
Yes. Yes, thank you. Excellent point. Yeah, Hobby Lobby, owners of Hobby Lobby. What do we learn about them?
They're wicked.
I mean, we could find other words. I've struggled with this too. Like, it is easy for me to just, for any one of us, just to lob out and ascribe a name, wicked. And at the same time, we share the table of faith with them. So, I must be cautious myself about what is the first. Why do you call out the log in someone else's eye and the speck in your own? Or
Exactly, that's what
whatever.
I was thinking.
Anyway, so that's not a condemnation of you. That's what my natural response wants to lead me to. But then at the same time, I also know that they're striving to live out their faith as faithful as they can. Go ahead, Frank.
But that's what makes this whole thing so extremely hard, is because these people believe heart, line, hooker, and sinker, and everything that theirs way is the right way, and they refuse to even look at other ways, and
Right.
that's why I feel hopeless.
Yes,
Okay,
I agree completely.
Natalie?
I think many of the people that are doing this and really are exactly right. They love God, they love Jesus, and they're doing the best they can with the information that they can give it to do what God wants them to do, how Jesus led them. I think the scary thing is that I think there's a minority who are cynically taking advantage of that.
Yeah.
Very good.
And twisting it and twisting the message. So that those people who are trying to do the best they can are getting a distorted picture of what it is that the Bible is teaching us about God and about specifically about Jesus.
Yes. Carolyn?
But I think it's cynical, and I don't
Yes.
think that I think there's a small minority who are not really interested in religion at all. They're interested in power.
Yes.
This is a way to get.
Hence, power worshipers. Hey, Carolyn.
Me about the Hobby Lobby is I always thought of them as a Christian business and all that, but I thought of them, they're just a Christian, they run their company. I didn't realize how much they try to infiltrate the government and ruling power. I just always thought of it as it's a business, Christian owners, so they're not going to open on Sunday. They're going to have different values maybe in their running of their business, but I had no idea how much they infiltrate into the government and areas of power.
Right. So, So my wife went to Hobby Lobby this last week, and so I was telling her about this chapter, and she goes, "Oh yeah, it's obvious. All you gotta do is walk through the hallways of the aisles of the Hobby Lobby, and you see, like the Museum of the Bible, a convergence of Christian faith, and patriotism, American patriotism. You can't really find objects at Hobby Lobby for oh, the Hindu
Menorah?
what?
The menorah?
There's probably not a whole lot or no Jewish artifacts
No,
at the Hobby Lobby. What's the Diwali? I'm thinking of Diwali, the Festival of Lights. I find Diwali articles, items at the Hobby Lobby. But and she didn't, I don't think she explicitly mentioned this, but you may remember before COVID, so 5 to 10 years ago, there was a lawsuit uh involving Hobby Lobby with regard to healthcare and insurance. It might have been during
The Affordable Care Act.
it might have been during Obama's last term, but with regard to whether or not they had the freedom to pull out women's reproductive services from what they health provided for healthcare, as well as denying healthcare for those in same-sex marriages, et cetera.
Yeah.
And that again kind of became one of my insight to what Hobby Lobby, the owners of Hobby Lobby, who they are and how they function. And Mardell Christian
yeah.
store is also in that same ilk as well. And
Chick-fil-A.
and Chick-fil-A, yes, but
Not as
different.
bad.
I mean, no.
There.
I don't know about not as bad or not. I just think it's different. Certainly Chick-fil-A has drawn the ire of the gay community, have been more overt publicly about issues related to homosexuality, whereas Mardell and Hobby Lobby have been overt about not just same-sex issues, but also public education, charter schools, homeschools, and women's rights. Cycling back to David Barton. So you have the Museum of the Bible becoming an anchor for strategic planning for a conservative movement. Now, it isn't as if these things just started in 2017. We've learned over the last few sessions that this has been movements over decades, well orchestrated, well organized movements of Christian nationalists over decades, but finding its footing in the right elected leader in the first Trump term would be an example of that. So with Trump in his first term, beginning in 2017, am I getting that right? Yeah, beginning in 2017, we see a lot, especially in the state houses across the United States, the continental United States, that we see a lot of the Christian nationalist movement taking root. During that time, if you remember, it was a lot about the bathroom bills as a big issue.
And they're coming back.
And well, right, they are, because we might have subsided during a Biden administration and now during a new administration, maybe resurrected. I think my assessment would be that some of that stuff, as they talked about in the book, she talked about in the book, some of those things are having new life breathed into them as a way of distraction from other key movements. So if we keep them, sort of what Marcelo was talking about, if we keep everyone running around with their hair on fire about all these other woke issues, then we can actually get our other agenda accomplished and not get as much highlight and attention to it. With regard to David Barton and him being back here in Texas and being someone who was on the board of the Texas State Board of Education, who set the state's textbook curriculum standard, his influence was so significant that he was allowed to submit his notes separately from vetted professionals, and his recommendations were parroted by a far-right faction of the board. Given Texas's large textbook purchasing power, these standards have historically influenced textbooks nationwide. He still currently sits on the advisory board for this organization called the National Council on Bible Curriculum in Public Schools, the NCBCPS. Whew, mouthful. National Council on Bible Curriculum in Public Schools, which produces sectarian Bible study classes for high school credit. Part of their movement would be that every student should have the right to demand from their public school district to get high school credit for Bible study. And they have worked up curriculum. I will email you all a link to a website called, and the website is called BibleInSchools.net. BibleInSchools.net. And you will see, now, it appears to me that they haven't updated that website in some time. However, that doesn't mean that the movement isn't still validated or still active. As we've seen, when you look at that website, BibleInSchools.net, you will, what I like to do is I always like to look at the advisory board or the council, and I like to look at the bona fides of each of them, who they are and how they're comprised. So if you look at last week, I talked about the Texas Bluebonnet curriculum. And if you look at the advisory board for the Texas Bluebonnet curriculum and you start looking at their bona fides, you will see that it is a very specifically curated group of people, predominantly of one color, although there were two persons of minority. Dr. Ben Carson, pediatric neurologist, was one on the currently still sitting on the advisory board for the Bluebonnet curriculum. And BiblesInSchools.net, you will find David Barton is still listed there. To date, our Bible curriculum, they report, has been implemented in 3,500 high schools in 41 states. Over 650,000 students have already taken this course nationwide on high school campus during school hours for credit. The other movement that we talked a little bit last week, and you've seen played out in this year's state legislative session in Texas, is charter schools being used as vehicles for indoctrination. Christian nationalists have increasingly partnered with education reformers to privatize public education, often through charter schools, which allow for more ideological religious curricula without overt resistance seen with traditional vouchers. Those are a few things I wanted to highlight from chapter 6 with regard to, because I have a lot more to say about 7. Anything else? We're going to have some, what I'm doing right now is I just want to kind of prime the pump, refresh our memory about these 2 chapters, unpack a little bit, and we'll move into some more discussions. Anything else about chapter 6 that y'all want to bring forward? Well, let's talk about chapter 7, the Blitz, turning the states into laboratories of theocracy. All right, everybody, what is the Blitz? What's the Blitz? There was the Blitzkrieg, I remember that. That's World War.
Yeah, that's the one.
That's Catherine Stewart, chapter 7, introduced us to a thing called the Blitz. Project Blitz. Anybody remember? Sort of. Keep going.
Throwing a bunch of religiously motivated bills, like putting body trust everywhere and all sorts of things all over the place, and having so many of them out there that they could be responded to appropriately. Some of them would slip through and some wouldn't, but
There you go. It was a playbook. I wrote down myself here. A playbook for a nationwide assault on state legislatures in all 50 states. The core strategy of Project Blitz is to, quote, flood the zone with coordinated simultaneous bills, end quote, to overwhelm and to jam state legislative processes. Excuse me. The stated aim of Project Blitz is to advance religious freedom. Organizers even discuss rebranding it as Freedom for All. The actual purpose is to, quote, establish a very clear set of privileges for one variety of religion, end quote, and to drive states toward a more biblically based society. Ultimately, religious liberty in this context means privilege for those with the right religion. The strategy of Project Blitz openly embraces deception and indirection. For instance, in God We Trust legislation is designed to force opponents to take unpopular stands on symbolic issues with the aim of capturing their responses on video for later use. So the idea was, if we introduce a variety of these things, these sentiments, these legislative bills, we can get Natalie on camera, who's an elected official, to say, I vote against this, and here's why, da, 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 da. And now I have my soundbite that I can use against you in the next campaign cycle. Right? And what did we see? We saw a massive sweep through of folks who that was used against so that they would be elected out and a conservative figure would be elected in. There was one in particular aspect of this movement called the Mississippi Missile. Anybody remember that? In 2016, a Mississippi law that allows individuals, nonprofits, and private businesses and government agencies to discriminate against targeted groups, especially LGBT people, with impunity based on sincerely held religious beliefs and without losing tax exempt status. It's considered one of the most sweeping religious liberty bills to date. What are some of your takeaways with regard to the Blitz? There were three movements, three phases of this orchestrated, organized project. Phase one, symbolic and ceremonial gestures like the In God We Trust. Phase two, injecting Christian nationalist idea, such as promoting Bible literacy curriculum, Christian Heritage Week in public schools. The goal was to convey that Christian conservatives are the real Americans and that everybody else is here by invitation only. And then phase three, legalized discrimination, the most contentious of the three categories, aiming to legalize discrimination against those whose actions or identities offend conservative Christian sensibilities, like the Mississippi Missile. I realize that some of you may not have covered all of the reading for this chapter. I was struck about, I had never heard of the Project Blitz before reading this chapter. I was struck at how eerie similar was Project Blitz to Project 2025.
Oh, yeah.
Very much.
Y'all familiar with that idea of Project 2025? Project Blitz.
25 and they were ooh.
Project Blitz started as a 48-page document and became like a 115-page document. Project 2025 is a 950-page document. And obviously her book came out long before Project 2025, a decade before. Here are some things that I think her book helps us to better understand about Project 2025. Let's see, I want to, okay. Catherine Stewart emphasizes that Christian nationalism is a political movement, not a social or cultural one with the ultimate goal of power. I think that she would argue that Christian nationalists would reject secular democratic government and instead support religious and theocratic government, which aligns with the stated aim of Project 2025 to deconstruct existing governmental structures. Stewart links Christian nationalism to the active generation and exploitation of cultural conflict. This was I was talking about earlier about let's send up woke balloons or cancel culture balloons so that progressives and Democrats and liberals can spend time shooting at those balloons. And while they're looking at these issues floating around in the sky, we got all this other work that's happening underneath. Project 2025 calls to address widely promoted woke culture that has spread throughout the federal government and identity politics and social justice advocacy, replacing such traditional American values with patriotism, colorblindness, and even workplace competence. Directs Catherine Stewart's observation that Christian nationalists save their most poisonous words for those who dare to identify as Christians of a different sort. Family values is another major aspect of 2025. Public education is a major focus of Project 2025. Insists that the Secretary of Education serve and the Department of Education serve parents and American ideals, and one that does not advocate, whose message is that children can choose their own sex, that America is systemically racist, and that math itself is racist, and expresses hope for the Department of Education's closure, and etc. That's Project 2025. A movement towards religious liberty, which we talked about a couple of weeks ago, like right out of the gate. The Trump administration had set up this task force and now a commission on religious liberty, which includes Lieutenant Governor Dan Patrick. Project 2025 has a big emphasis on judicial control and writes that personnel is policy, and the need to assemble an army of aligned, vetted, trained, and prepared conservatives go to work on day one. All of that, some of that you may have become familiar with and prior to the inauguration of this year. But it is the most robust document that aligns with Christian nationalism to date. If you go, and I'll try to find the website again. There is a Project 2025 tracker. And I saw this a few days ago, and it tracks how much of that 950-page document has been accomplished.
Oh, it's just insane.
So I can't remember. I think we're more than 50% at this point. So you can follow the tracker, kind of like when you get Domino's and you can watch the tracker, like, oh, your pizza's out for delivery. That's what they have for the Project 2025. And that's accomplished in the 6 months of the first year of the first of
And
this
he's the one
term.
that said.
That he didn't have anything.
What,
with it.
I don't know what this is, I don't have anything to do with that.
Okay, well, we've done a little bit of a summary. I want to ask you guys, what motivates political and religious groups to invest heavily in rewriting historical narratives?
Power.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay, what else? What's to be gained? Power is one thing, but
Fame recognition.
go deeper than power. Carolyn?
They know what it means. You're interpreting it a certain way, and that's their cognitive view. And they are ahead or above the mass of people who do not see that.
Okay, righteousness.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah, Dave?
I think another word besides power is control, because once they have a majority of people who don't realize what the undercurrent is, then they can control those people to vote or to support the decisions that they want, whether it's same-sex marriage or abortion or any of these other hot topics. They can control what's going on in the country.
Okay, Natalie?
Yeah, I think they know that the idea is to obfuscate what you're doing. So instead of being explicit about, we want to, we want white people to be in power. We want to go back to white men run everything. Instead of saying it that way, they say it way so that it seems like, oh, this is a good thing. We want religious liberty for Christians. We want to be able to say, God we trust. We want to be able to have, and the evil empire won't let us have that sign. And by golly, we should be able to have that sign up. And so this is about religious liberty, but really, truly, it's about, this is the only religion. And if you aren't part of that religion, then you don't get liberty.
Yeah.
It's the opposite.
Yeah, it was fascinating to me, picking on what you said.
Yeah.
It was new to me to realize that there was a whole listing of states that the words "In God We Trust" must be printed on the police cars in those states. And I think about that, I'm like, well, what kind of religious liberty is that?
Yeah.
To mandate that you must have on the side of your car, your police car, "In God We Trust." Frank.
So, Natalie said something and I agreed with her until last week when we had the 3 chapters, because it's obvious that they all wanted this for white Americans that were Christians. But then when they realized that they weren't getting the numbers that they wanted and that they weren't getting the power out of their movement that they had expected, that's when they started allowing the Blacks and the Hispanics to come aboard. And it really aggravated me because they don't care about them as people. They just want to use them to get what they want.
Bodies, yeah.
Yeah, exactly. We want to include them because we'll work for everybody. But the idea is, well, we want you to vote for how we want you to vote so that we get this power and control. And then once we have that, then we can begin to do what we really want to do, which is because you will have given us the unlimited power to exclude people who don't look like you, lead like you, go to the city, go to the church.
I feel like the reason we feel that this is scary, what you say, Natalie, is that once they get control, my feeling is that they're already gained control.
They've got,
And it's not, there isn't an end goal of saying, I don't have control, now I do. I feel like they're gaining ground, step by step.
Yes, absolutely.
And
Sure. And solidifying, maintaining control. So big in the news from the last week associated with that is the idea of redistricting in Texas, right? In order that it might yield 5 more conservative seats. And I went to a rally on Friday night and they talked a lot about it. In attendance was Julian Castro, Beto O'Rourke, Jasmine Crockett, who's a firebrand, state representative, I don't know her first name, but Hinojosa, who represents Austin, Gina Hinojosa, and state rep James Tallarico, and all of them spoke and spoke on issues related on a variety of issues, but they each spoke on this idea of redistricting, so that it is a way of sustaining control, in fear that there could be a loss of control. And it's James Tallarico, and I'll try to find some clips for you guys if I can. And I want to encourage you, if you find clips on James Tallarico, to listen to him. He is, in case you don't know who he is, he's a state representative from San Antonio, and young adult male.
He's from Austin.
Yeah, he represents Round Rock.
Oh, I'm sorry. He was a middle school teacher on the west side, San Antonio. And thank you, Marie. I meant that. I was thinking about his work coming from the public education on the west side of San Antonio. But he's a state representative. He is a student at Austin Presbyterian Theological Seminary and pursuing his Master's of Divinity degree, and is has spoken a lot in the last several weeks about the importance of not checking your faith at the door, but then also not weaponizing your faith as we've seen as a form of control and power, as we've seen as seen noted in Christian nationalist movement. And so I would encourage you, if you see clips or you see him pop up, to take note of that. Yes, Carolyn.
Also, I haven't listened to it yet and I want to. I just don't sit down to listen to something for that long. He just recently did a podcast
Yes.
that is supposed to be really good.
So he did a podcast with
Joe Rogan.
Joe Rogan.
All right, that's who it was. I thought it was.
And
That's good.
that would be the other thing about James Tallarico is he has great assurance of his own faith and the courage to be able to go into quote unquote the lion's den and visit with politicians, reporters, talk show people who are not of his same mindset. A huge proponent of public education, incredibly well. I'm sorry, I'm elevating him so much, but I say that in the sense of where it intersects this idea of our Christian faith with how we practice our faith for someone like him in his elected capacity. One of the things he said Friday night that I appreciated and it stuck with me was, you elect us to go in good faith to do things that are best for society. And the last 15, 20 years has been nothing but mandating you to have to become a political junkie like us. But we love doing this stuff, but that's why we do it. But you don't have time to get into the weeds and to get into the depths of all of this. You don't have time in your life, you have to work 2 or 3 jobs or multiple jobs, you have family, you have all these obligations. You shouldn't have to be a political junkie in order to hold us accountable for what you sent us to do. And yet with the idea of corruption and the idea of maneuvers that we see outlined here, he said, you being the electorate have to pay super close attention and be ready to call balls and strikes. Yeah, Marty?
Same ilk as Raphael Warnock. And I think it's occurred to me when I read your question, though, we need more ministers like yourself to run for office because that would help combat the Christian.
Well, let's talk about that. Let's talk about that. Raphael Warnock also went to Union Seminary in New York City. It's a Presbyterian or formerly it is Presbyterian school or associated with the Presbyterian Church USA. At least in the early part of his elected career to Congress, still preached on Sundays, still led a church on Sundays.
He actually still does.
Does he still?
He
Okay.
still preaches at Ebenezer Baptist in Atlanta. Not every single Sunday, but most.
So let's talk about that. I want to pull out exactly what you just said. Correct me if I get it wrong. We need more ministers like, I'm paraphrasing, like Warnock and Tallarico, you said myself. So let's take that sentiment. We need more faith leaders in politics, and let's put it in the context of this class talking about people who use their faith to achieve powerful societal ends. Frank?
Well, just like what Joe said just now, this is why this organization has so much power, is because they're doing exactly what she just said. And then I was able to listen to Tallarico on the House floor when he was debating the 10 Commandments thing. And it was a masterwork of how he did that, because he made them look like idiots. The authors of that bill were sitting there, they couldn't even make full sentences after, because he just spoke the truth. He wasn't mean.
Still went through.
I know, it did go through. But But if we don't have more people speaking the truth, then how are we ever going to get out of this mess?
Okay. So what a great segue question to how can faithful Christians advocate for truthful accounts of history even when those truths are difficult and uncomfortable? How can Christians advocate for truthful accounts of history even when those truths are difficult and uncomfortable?
Well,
Marie?
I think it's like you've talked about a number of times. If you read the red letters of the Bible, those are difficult words. Those are difficult things. And so if we focus on that, it's speaking the truth, it's speaking difficult things. That just what makes sense to me.
Okay. It's just having a courage to be able to embrace it, read it honestly. I think the challenge I read in my dissertation work, I read a lot on the state history of Texas, and when I went on my sabbatical journey and research for the dissertation, I incorporated time to specifically go to the Alamo in San Antonio and to read the wall story that they have listed in this, that, and the other, and to point out things that weren't exactly accurate.
Right.
And so I remember standing there, and there were these visitors who were looking at it, and they were talking about, oh wow, da, da, da. And in my head, what I'm wanting to say is like, yes, but that's not right. That's not right.
It's not.
So, you know, how then do we be faithful in articulating and advocating for historical truths?
Well, that true still, and on your subject, what you're saying about that's not right, it's because you study.
Uh-huh.
You understood what you read of the history.
Uh-huh.
It's the same thing with the red letters. Sometimes there are stories there that we take as what we understand now. But that story meant nothing about that. The vocabulary that was chosen was different than what was intended because they spoke differently there at that time. It's just like the telephone line, and you tell the story and it goes down, and it doesn't say the same thing at all.
Well,
So you have to study to understand what the principle is and what is actually going on. So they take the red letters literally. They don't study into those red
so
letters.
I think you're talking about critical thinking.
Yeah.
And
In the context.
I would be okay even if they just took the red letters, really. I'd be okay with that. But critical thinking leads us to understand more in the surrounding of why Jesus said those words in that situation. And but I'm okay if they just take it literally too. Hoffner?
Well, today it seems so hard for people to figure out what's true. Talk about what's truth. What is truth? Well, taking your example of the Alamo, that book is called Not the Alamo.
Forget the Alamo.
Right, Forget the Alamo. And when that came out, the impactor came out and said, no, none of that is correct. So he's got his version of it.
Yeah.
And it's just like on news, you've got different news.
Yes.
Slanted either direction, and people that watch one of those, that's their truth.
Yeah.
And they have people on the other side, that's their truth. So how today, in today's world and communication, how do people discern what is truth? There's so many avenues for what they would say is true. Well, that's not true. This is true.
So I'm gonna Diane, then I'll come back and add that in. Yeah.
Well, I think one way you do that is to not just watch or read one source of information. I really purposely try to watch different broadcasts. I try to read different things, you know, and it's interesting the difference that you see in how the same story is presented.
And, but some of them, there's certain sources that just like screams propaganda, I can't even read through it anymore.
Marty, then Dave.
That's why Pete Buttigieg goes on Fox News, like he goes right where they write, you know, and it talks with, you know what I mean? That's what we need to do.
And I think that's good.
Yeah, and it goes to what those other people do.
Dave.
Well, that's why I made up this one word today, mediafied. Because I was trying to describe how you get overwhelmed with the media and I think a lot of people will get on the internet and read stories or listen to podcasts. And there's a string of them because one leads to another and they reference all these other people. And pretty soon they're believing a particular truth because of the media of all of the things that they're listening to. And maybe none of them are particularly accurate.
Yeah. I want to start bringing us towards closure for today, but here's what my first awakening, so to speak, of when I began to realize this. My second year in college, I had a Heritage of the Western Civilization class, and the class title was called "Who Owns the Past?" And what I loved about that class, which has influenced me, is the idea of the quick and easy answer of who owns the past is those who write it.
Yeah.
Right? Or but drawing all the way back to y'all, the phrase I kept thinking about was trust but verify, or question everything. And y'all have heard me say it before. God gave us brains and expects us to use it. This idea of critical thinking, this idea of being mindful about what's written right there in black and white in the textbook. It said that up is down and down is up. It must be, or no, the media said that up is down and down is up. And the podcast said, I heard it on the Instagram reel and the 17 seconds of the reel. And is to trust but verify, and to embrace the skills of critical thinking. And the way that I would argue, this is Josh speaking, the way that I would argue that you can have control and power and assert authority over people is to cause them, to teach them to not think critically. And if they're not thinking critically, then what I say goes. And that's what leads to both the success of an organization like Fox News, as well as MSNBC. I mean, both of them are for-profit companies, and both of them want to feed you in a way that you don't have to embrace or participate in critical thinking skills. I saw it on TV, it must be true. So I think that is where the assault on public education really is critical for those who are striving to have power in this Christian nationalist movement. Let us not teach the ways for you to think and reason. Let us think about how the ways in which we can tell you what is truth. I mean, Pilate asked that question, what is truth? I saw, let's see, this was recently, I love soccer, and the World Cup soccer is coming to the United States in 2026. Next summer, World Cup soccer, every 4 years, massive international soccer tournament. It's coming to the US. Huzzah, wonderful. Well, about a month ago, there was all of these Instagram reels and news about, because of Trump's immigration policies, FIFA, who runs the tournament for World Cup soccer, has decided to not bring it to the United States. That would have been breaking news if it were true, but it was all over the social media as truth. And then the proliferation of the volume of AI generated videos that look real is adding to the complexity of what is truth. Which it only grows the need for us to better understand what it means to say, what it means to embrace critical thinking skills. So one way that I feel personally that I have tried to, from a Christian community, lead us in my tenure here is for us to embrace critical thinking skills in our Christian education courses. And hopefully that we are deploying some of those skills with those external sources as we're encountering them and holding them in tension with our faith. Does that make sense? All right, one more, Frank.
So this is from my own life experience back in the early 80s before I moved to California, when I was trying to figure out who I was and trying to fit in. And that was in my, I call it my stupid part time of my life, where I decided to become Southern Baptist. And it's a long story.
Great.
That's when I learned critical thinking, because I would listen in their classes and I would just pay attention to what people did around me. This person up here who I really didn't know very well was speaking in this class, and everybody's just taking what he's saying as gospel truth. And but the way I read that scripture, it was on spiritual gifts in 2 Corinthians. It's a long story, but I didn't agree with him. And so when you tried to ask questions, then you were basically told that you're not allowed to think because that person was the authority figure and you're just the low life scum over here, so you can't think. So I realized at that point to start using like a litmus test. If it doesn't pass the God is love test, then it's not of God.
Or at least how would this be out of alignment with
Yes.
God is love?
Yes.
And let's explore that further. So good. Al, you get the last word.
Okay, well, I'll try. So I'm struggling with response and how we can do that kind of response. And what I see happening is the people now in power are defining a religion, and the people against it come across as anti-religion. And that's never going to work.
Yeah.
We are a faith-based country, whatever your faith is.
Right.
So if you come across as anti-religion, we're not going to win this game. There are two ingrained already. We have to come across recognizing there is the concepts of faith within the development of the country that was talked about. I mean, not a religion, but a faith. And I think that's the struggle. I think we've been going at it wrong. Now, I'm not good at this at all, but when I look at it, if you want to succeed, you have to understand them, your enemy or your competitor or what, and then be able to respond in a way that they have to think.
Yeah.
And if you can get them to that point, or at least the population at that, you might be able to move some.
Yeah.
So I like that you sent us an article on civil religion. And I thought that was an interesting concept that I never actually ever dealt with, but I read that a couple of times. And thinking, okay, how can we change our approach and not go butt head to head, because we may not win that right now. But can we change how we approach to open the door?
Yeah. And that's where I would say, I tell my son all the time, you can only swim at the pool you're at. And so first off, you need to know how to swim, right? And so as Christians, that's you can rightly assume that's why I'm so passionate about y'all taking theology class, reading, understanding doctrines, understanding what it is that you're professing and confessing and worship and Bible study. You can only swim the pool that you're in, but you need to know how to swim. And then you make a difference you make a difference in the with the people that are around you and your sphere of influence in that regard. And that is what keeps me grounded with hope. I can keep doing the good work and I can stay here and, you know, I might not be able to do stuff in Oklahoma, but I can do things right here. And this is the pool that I'm in. This is the pool I'm going to swim. We need to close. Could someone lead us in the closing prayer? Thank you, Kathy.
God of past, present, and future, guide us as we live this plane. Grant us courage to seek truth, wisdom, to discern carefully, and humility to learn from the past. Strengthen us to resist false narratives and inspire us to pursue histories that lead to greater justice, mercy, and compassion. Shape us into agents of reconciliation, always anchored in the truth of your love. May you know that Jesus Christ is in you.
Amen. All right. Thank you, everybody. Thank you, online friends.
I don't think you do. I don't think so.